George from Ireland. So this video is about the changing face of the Conservative and Unionist Party. So a leadership election was triggered a few days ago. Of course, there's that 5th of July revolt. Or was it? Anyway, Rishi Sunak, Sajid Javid resigning, and something like 63 out of the 179 government ministers resigned. Johnson can fill those roles. He's going. So 11 people expressed an interest in standing for the Conservative leadership. 6 of the 11 are non-white. That's astonishing. Only 20% of Britons are non-white, but over 50% of Conservative leadership hopefuls are non-white. Bear in mind, the non-white minority is younger on average than the UK population. And MPs, we've got to be at least 18, but there are very few MPs below the age of 30. So in that sense, non-whites are hugely overrepresented amongst those going for the Conservative leadership. 6 of those going for it are female. There are only 3 white males amongst those 11 candidates. If you go back to the 90s, you probably would expect that all 11 hopefuls would be white males. I remember when John Major resigned as leader of the Conservative Party, all of them were white males going for it. So often, even the Labour Party, I mean, it was 2 out of 3 candidates going for Labour's leadership in '94 were white males. And then when it came up in 2007 for Labour, again, it was only one person, Gordon Brown. 2010, mostly white males in Labour. Okay, and 2 of the 3 white men going for it have some Jewish background. Are they ethnic minority? Arguably. So there's only one Gentile man amongst those 11 going for it, which is astonishing considering, well, Gentiles would be like 99% of the UK population. And not long ago, there would have been all Gentile men going for it. So the Conservatives were once thought to be unwelcoming to non-white and non-Christian people. Maybe that's an unfair, perhaps it's a caricature, but that was the perception. Sad to see the decline of the Anglo-Saxon mile. I'm indifferent. I mean, I'm probably a little bit Anglo-Saxon myself, but I'm Irish, mostly Gaelic. Let me see. So the Conservative Party never banned ethnic minority people joining it. They just tend not to join it in such numbers. Maybe ethnic minority people, they tend to be lower income. They lived in conurbations, but Labour was stronger, so their voting habits weren't very different of their white neighbours. So there were always some ethnic minority people in the Conservative Party, which is just very few. And until the 90s, the Conservative Party tended to select ethnic minority candidates only to stand in very safe Labour seats. So even Labour often selected non-white candidates, but had them stand in secure Conservative seats. So it turns out that overwhelmingly white constituencies have no hesitation in electing non-white MPs. So there have been academics studied this for decades, so it's actually not a disadvantage. So being a Muslim or a Hindu doesn't appear to be any disadvantage in UK politics, or indeed Sikh or Jewish. So 1/3 of the British Indian community are Sikhs, whereas only like 2% of people in India are Sikh. So Sikhs and Hindus in the United Kingdom are increasingly conservative. 20 years ago, they were mostly Labour. This is partly due to enrichment and because they feel more secure of their place in the United Kingdom. In many cases, they're the 4th generation in the United Kingdom. If you break down the UK population by religious denomination, Jews are the richest, 2nd richest are Sikhs, and 3rd richest is Church of England, and so on. Sunni Muslims are quite low on the list. So let me see. British Indians don't necessarily want mass immigration. It's often coming from Eastern Europe. They're necessarily against all immigration, including from Eastern Europe, but say, yeah, just because my great-grandparents were immigrants, that doesn't mean we should have no limits on immigration whatsoever. They're allowed to be saying we want mass immigration or we don't want mass immigration. Both views are completely acceptable. So Muslims in the United Kingdom are mostly Pakistani and Bangladeshi by extraction. They still tend heavily towards the Labour Party, but on average they're less wealthy than the Sikhs and Hindus. Hindus in the Netherlands tend to vote for parties on the right of the spectrum, I see. So of the 11 Conservative leadership wannabes, there are only 3 Oxonians: Jeremy Hunt, Liz Truss, and Rishi Sunak. 2 went to Cambridge, Tom Tugendhat and Sowella Braverman. So that's 5 out of the 11. In the old days would have been higher than that. I mean, I think all 11 are graduates. 7 went to independent schools. None of them are gay, so far as I know. So the 3 of Indian ancestry are Priti Patel, Rishi Sunak, and Sowella Braverman, née Fernandez. 2 of the people who went for it are of Pakistani extraction, Chishti Rahman and Sajid Javid. One is of Iraqi Kurdish origin, Nadim Zahawi. So 3 people who gave her are Muslims, 2 are Jewish, 2 are Hindus. I'm not sure. So that's 7 of the remaining 4. I don't know if all of them are Christians. I mean, nominal Christians. White Britons, unless you actually know them to be Jewish, you assume they're culturally Christian. 2 of them are barristers. Now, barristers are probably the most overrepresented profession in Parliament. So the ethnicity of the candidates, it shows the browning of Britain. So the bookmakers are saying who the serious contenders are. It's really Dishi Rishi, Liz Truss, and Penny Mordaunt. So Rishi's born in the United Kingdom to Indian parents. I think they moved from Uganda. If he becomes Prime Minister, he'll be the second PM to have attended Winchester College. The previous Wykehamist who did so was Henry Addington. London is to Paddington as Pitt is to Addington, as Addington was seen as a political minnow. And like Addington, Sunak is the son of a doctor, and he's also an Oxford graduate, like Addington. So Boris Johnson now reviles Sunak. As Boris Johnson can't be Prime Minister, he's determined to at least stop the other chap, to stop Rishi Sunak. So he perceives Sunak as a backstabber who did so much to bring him down, saying he's disloyal. So Johnson still has considerable sway. There's still at least a third of the Conservative Party still loyal to him. They realise he's going as Prime Minister, but they will do something that he wants. So try and stop Rishi. So Sunak says that tax cutting now is fiscally imprudent. Anyway, he might be right. So Liz Truss is probably the second most likely to win. So Miss Truss, she's Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary. She's a white Briton and her ancestry from a Christian background. Her parents were far left. They wouldn't even vote Labour on the basis it was too right wing. But Liz Truss, she was a Liberal Democrat at university. She had an affair with a married Conservative MP, but I don't think that counts against her. So she dressed like Maggie Thatcher on a recent visit to Russia. People say she's trying to channel Thatcher. She's seen as the standard bearer of the right of the party. Some people think she's too ideologically blinkered. Remember, she campaigned for Remain, but she's come on side with a vengeance. She's negotiated lots of trade deals since then. They're mostly simply continuation deals, just trading on the same basis as the UK traded when it was in the European Union. So she's an Oxford graduate, she's married with children, she uses a maiden name in politics. So she's said to be a tax cut, she becomes minister. She's 46, could have a long career ahead of her, whereas Sunak's 51, former head boy of his school, as in a very conventional. So Penny Mordaunt, bizarrely, is the third highest rank of the candidates. I think she's deeply unimpressive. So Miss Mordaunt is 49. She's the first female Defence Secretary of the United Kingdom. She was in the Royal Naval Reserve for years. So Miss Mordaunt is a trade minister now. She's not even in the cabinet. So she's seen as a moderate. Her views are not very contentious. Anyway, so she's a white Briton in her ethnicity. She was married but got a divorce after 1 year. So she's a long-term boyfriend. She's got no children. Now, she said that trans women aren't women, which has led to squeals of outrage from far left, permanently indignant people like Owen Jones for this woman for telling the plain truth. Anyway, so you need the endorsement of at least 20 MPs to get on the ballot, which is going to be imminent. As I say, the 11, they've whittled it down to 9, if that, already, and then some might not even get the 20. So it might be fewer than that. I mean, 11 candidates is a ridiculous number. So notice, of the top 3 candidates, none is a white male. So 2 are female, 1's non-white. Not long ago, you'd expect all 3 out of 3 to be white boys. So probably 4th most likely candidate is Tom Tugendhat, who's Franco-British, white. He's got some Jewish ancestry. So he campaigned for the United Kingdom to remain within the European Union. He's a moderate. Maybe some of the Leavers still don't trust him. He's quite bland. He's not well known. He went to St Paul's School, attended the University of Bristol. He got a master's degree in Cambridge. He studied Arabic, was a territorial army officer. He's 48. He's not terribly well known, and not a great public speaker, despite a fairly interesting background. So Kemi Badenoch, 41. She's a London-born person. She's of Nigerian ancestry. She lived in Nigeria and the United States as a child. So she attended one of the London universities. She worked in IT for a bank, so she's the MP for Saffron Walden, having previously been in the London Assembly. So she represents this very white constituency in Essex. She campaigned with the United Kingdom to leave the European Union, despite joking the husband was a Remainer. Her husband's a parliamentary candidate in Foyle, very stony soil for the Tory party. She's self-assured, telegenic, likeable. She has no foes, so far as I can say. So, I mean, she's not going to get it, but she could get some quite senior cabinet post. And she's an example of just how drastically the Conservative Party has changed. Look at Sowella Braverman, used to be known by her maiden name, Sowella Fernandez. So she's British Indian Christian. She was a London-born lady. She was a stellar mind, an outstanding schoolgirl. She got a scholarship to an independent school. She read law at Queen's College, Cambridge. And she's the only barrister still in the race. So she was Attorney General. Her husband's a white Briton. So she's 41, and she's going to fail this time, but she could still be leader later. She'll have many more bites of the cherry. Jeremy Hunt is the only indigenous British male in the race. It doesn't matter who's native, who's not. Anyway, that's what it is. You might say that's a good thing that the Conservative Party is so racially diverse. So he makes up for his lack of diversity with a Chinese wife. He's the son of an admiral. He was head boy of a school charter house. So yes, he's cloyingly conformist and dull. He attended Oxford University. He became fluent in Japanese, living in Japan. He's a self-made multi-millionaire as an entrepreneur. He was foreign secretary, he was health secretary before that. He declined to serve in Johnson's cabinet. He was runner-up in the 2019 leadership. So it's surprisingly he's performing so poorly now, because he would be a real breath of fresh air after Johnson. He's a serious-minded, responsible, boring person. We would probably want a bit of dullness. Zadim Nahari is probably the next highest rated. So he's an Iraqi Kurd, born in Baghdad, came to the UK as a child. He went to King's College London. He grew up in Wimbledon. Then went to King's College School Wimbledon. He's a multi-millionaire entrepreneur from YouGov. He lived in Iraq for a while. His tax affairs are under investigation by Her Majesty's Revenue Customs. He says this is a smear. So he doesn't discuss his faith. I mean, he was certainly from a Muslim background. So he was appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer. No sooner did he do that than he started trying to inveigle Johnson to step down. Well, that succeeded. So anyway, Zahawi is 55, so I suppose this is his last shot at it. He's actually not very well known considering his senior position. So Grant Shapps was chairman of the Conservative Party. I think he's a backbench MP now. So he's a Jewish Londoner. He went to Manchester Metropolitan University, one of the worst in the United Kingdom. He's got no particular following. He's a bit on the dull side. I don't think he has any enemies, and he's not got a hope of getting it. Priti Patel is the Home Secretary. I think she still hasn't publicly declared, but they say she's been on manoeuvres for months, raising funds. And so you think she'd be more highly rated, but maybe she's going to pull out and back someone else in the hope that she'll retain her position, maybe get a different position. She's born in the United Kingdom into a Hindu Indian family. Her parents had moved from Uganda in the 70s when they were booted out by Idi Amin. She attended Keele University. She was always Eurosceptic. She was in the Referendum Party in 1997. I met her in the Conservative Party headquarters in 1998. So she's married to a white British Christian. She has a child. She's an outspoken Zionist. She's the MP for Witham in Essex, an overwhelmingly white seat. But some people see that think that she's shrill, that she's a bit demented. Her civil servants cannot abide her, say that she's verbally abusive and shrieks at them. So Sajid Javid's already withdrawn. I'm surprised he didn't do a bit better. He was Health Secretary till he resigned days ago, been Chancellor of the Exchequer a few years ago. So his 5th of July resignation helped bring down Johnson. So he's a British Pakistani. He's a non-practicing Muslim. His wife is a white British Christian. So an example of sort of integration there. He was perceived as only semi-successful in the portfolios he held. So Javid, he was the son of a bus driver. He said his parents voted Labour despite holding conservative beliefs. And he said, people asked him, why do they vote Labour? He said 2 words, Enoch Powell. The perception the Conservatives were racialist. So Javid went to Exeter University where he met Tim Collins, became lifelong friends, and there were almost no Muslims in the Conservative Party at that time. So Javid made millions at Deutsche Bank. Anyway, he's not very popular. He's pulled out the race. He's 51. He could still hold a major cabinet office. Look at Reshman Chishti. He's virtually unknown. I couldn't believe it. I had to look him up when he said he wanted to be Tory leader. He's a British Pakistani Muslim. He was a Labour parliamentary candidate in 2005, but managed to get elected as a Conservative 5 years later. So he's an advisor to Benazir Bhutto, who's a barrister. Anyway, he's withdrawn owing to lack of support. He's very young, could yet be promoted. And so that's how the Tory party's changed. Thanks. Bye.